storytelling that signal that, you only get to that spot after you've practiced this, over those hours, probably not 10,000 iterations, but you start to sharpen those skills of being able to connect different ideas around the topics that you might be thinking about, which is very interesting. Something that AI certainly hasn't done yet.
Yeah.
I think the big thing missing there is probably the curiosity that AI models need. And I think that's what's driving the whole connection in your head between hey, I have all this framework, I've done this for 5 or 6 or 10 different subjects. Now I have this new subject coming in. Oh, look at all these threads that I can tie to the existing stuff.
Yeah, it's like, I think a good way to measure it is in the quality of ideas that are crossing your mind.
Okay.
The more you practice the structure of something in the core fundamentals, usually the higher quality of your ideas that you're getting. So
right.
I can even give the analogy in basketball is if you're practicing enough drills enough times, eventually that will become ingrained and you'll get bored with the drills. That just means that you're actually learning it and you understand it. And you'll start thinking beyond the initial drills that you were doing. The things that you used to have trouble with won't be the same. In soccer, it's all the same. And so that's the exact thing. All right. we had a camera die on us.
Yes. The last thing we were talking about is the analogy between learning how to dribble and then being able to go behind the back.
Yeah.
Because you're not focused on dribbling anymore.
Yeah.
You're learning the fundamentals. We talked a little bit about the story and how putting the story together is a fundamental, the different parts.
Yep.
And then putting your brain as a receiver for those parts is something that you can start now, if you have an ample amount of time between now and when you have to deliver that signal.
And I think the thing that I was getting into after was a way to come up with what you want to say.
Okay, so dive into that. How do you come up with what you want to say?
So there's definitely a few different things. I wanted to go back to that before we were going into the actual structure and how we look at it from that angle. But how you get into another way to come up with what you want to say outside of just capturing ideas is thinking about people in the space that you're trying to tell a story about. So if it's an interview in the text space, then thinking about people that you've learned something from.
That's a good one.
Another thing might be people that you admire in the space, people that you don't want to be like in the space. Those all are areas of source material, because from there you can talk about the thing that you've learned. It might be a perspective. It might be that somebody did something differently than you did.
Yep.
It might be somebody that just taught you something that you just didn't know before. And then then the story comes into place when you talk about how you were before you knew this information and how you operate after you've gotten that information.
Even when you're talking about these things, my mind is starting to unravel that would be part of the frame, or that would be part of the context, because once you start thinking this way, it opens up a whole new world of how people communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very important.
Yeah.
But keep going.
No, that's a fact. And I think a big part of it is having the discipline to trust a couple different strategies of coming up with a story, and then part of it is just planting that flag and then orienting yourself, because once you're oriented, it's easier to see. When you know what you're looking for, it's easier to see what the process is like. And sometimes we just get used to getting in that state where we're looking for the process, which will happen, and not actually using the methods that we have available. But I think that's something that I found over the last couple of years, where it's, if I need to come up with something to say, I need to come up with, on a given topic, it's starting with people, because usually in my interactions with people, whether it's somebody I know, it might be somebody in a book. Like, an author is a person that qualifies in this list.
Right.
A YouTuber or a blogger is a person that qualifies in this list. And that's a great area to jump off and say, okay, I learned something, my perspective was changed, and really stories are about transformation of the protagonist. They thought this one way, they were put through some circumstances where they had to learn a lesson,
The plot.
and then they learned that lesson. And anybody who's listening to the story might benefit from having learned that lesson as well, and that's the whole reason
without
why
having to go through the hardship.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so that's like the whole point of it. And then from there, it goes into more of the structure. Okay, now I have this thing. How do I organize it in a way where I can actually communicate that? And I think the number one thing is, again, going to the point where you have the point of the story, which is a claim. It's a claim, it's an opinion, it's a belief, it's a principle, but it's more around, I think it's more around a claim. Like it's a topic, it's a claim that you're saying that I believe this thing to be true and I don't believe something else to be true.
Right.
And that might be a recollection of a story of events. It might be just an opinion, like, hey, I think this is a good thing, I think this is a bad thing. It could be about values.
It could be both, right? It could be good or bad, right?
Yeah.
You hear this concept of like, oh, stop telling yourself stories.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, in that scenario, you're probably telling somebody to stop reinforcing a bad habit, or to stop telling themselves something that's negative, or not true.
Well, if somebody's telling themselves stories, it's like they're telling themselves their own lessons that don't necessarily line up with reality, or like what's actually happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're trying to tell yourself your own signals.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But I think then going back to that, it's like, okay, then there's one thing that you want to be communicating in a story, one idea, and there's a relief in that because, okay, I don't need a million things.
It's simple. Yeah.
But then there's also the stress of, okay, how am I going to tell one idea and make it that?
I only have one chance to do this.
Yeah. Or how do I expand on this? How do I talk about this?
Yeah.
One thing I think that's important is not all stories need to be super long. Sometimes a story can be
That's my favorite.
short, right?
That's one of my favorite ones.
Long ones or short ones?
No, so there's this whole Reddit subgroup.
Okay.
Whereas short stories, right?
Yeah.
Stories in 7 words or less.
Oh, okay.
And it's like, you can effectively tell a good story in 7 words or less. Most of the time it's horror stories.
Yeah.
Because something good about a horror setting, right, is that you can not tell the ending, but the reader gets the ending. Right? So if you leave off on a cliffhanger, that's another really important story fundamental. If you leave off on a cliffhanger, you're framing the ending, but you don't have to say the ending because the reader or the watcher or the viewer has that ending for them in their own head.
Yeah, stories are also collaborative.
Exactly.
Yeah, because a good story is going to, and this is in the delivery aspect of it,
Yep.
right? Like,
Not the telling.
Yeah, there's the first version for you, and then there's a version for the person that or the group of people, your audience, and the second one is that where you start adding in those, like, the engaging aspect of it, where, okay, now I have the source material, how do I engage with the people that I'm talking to? How do I make sure that they feel like they want to learn more about what's going on? They feel invested in the story
To continue.
and they want it to continue. Yep. And so that's the next part. But then with the structure thing, I think it's really important to have one main idea, and then it's a large part of it is about introducing that idea to your audience.
Yep.
And I think part of the first act is the introduction around stories. So it's who's a key person. It might be you, it might be somebody else that you're telling the story about. What's the main setting, what's pertinent information, and you're just introducing artifacts. Actually, one profession that's very, very good at storytelling are lawyers.
Yeah, it's kind of their whole gig.
That's the whole gig, right?
Yeah.
And you see that in the structure of a case that they're presenting, where they're telling you a story. The protagonist might be my defendant. The protagonist might be the plaintiff.
Right.
And that whole framing and positioning is the critical part of the profession. And then before that, they're gaining evidence. They're introducing key witnesses. That a witness is somebody who experienced the story that you're trying to tell firsthand. You have experts who can interpret when people are bullshitting about their stories, right? But it's one of those things where they're also very good at, okay, here's my main point that I'm trying to introduce. Here's my other main point. And then you have a judge who's now going to determine, okay, is that takeaway something that we should rule in favor of? We should
Who
let
has the
this person
stronger
off?
signal?
Yeah, that's really what it is. Who has the stronger signal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who has-
Which story stuck?
Yeah, and then it's held to like a jury of your peers. Like
Right.
those are the, and so a lot of people aren't. Most of us aren't put under that scrutiny
Day to day.
we day to day. But in a legal setting, that's the ante to play. That's
Yeah.
that's what the
That's a really good analogy. I like that because I mean, even if you spend any time in a courtroom,
Yeah.
right? Like, even the proceedings have a very logical beginning, middle, and end.
yeah
Right?
yeah.
It, like even
Yeah.
the
Opening
si-
cases,
Yeah.
and then you have your
the middle,
middle.
which is all deliberation,
Yeah.
and then you have closing remarks. So it's almost set up as a story.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting how you see this framework play out in all facets of life.
Yeah, and then there's the so that's the like a core part, and then the introductory part is like the opening statements. A lot of it is previewing. I think Alfred Hitchcock said, if you want to create anticipation, tell the audience what you're going to do, and then what becomes curious is how they get there. That
Sure.
the how is where the story is in. How did this happen? But the tell them where they're gonna go. Tell them what's gonna happen. Tell them things about what's gonna happen.
I've seen that in a
Yeah.
couple of different major films where it's a guy relaxing on a beach with his $5 million, and it's like, well, how'd he get here? And like
Yeah.
the story is about him getting there.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I was watching Dexter a few months ago.
It's a great show.
The original sin. I think it's
Yeah.
the newest one, and we already know what happens with Dexter.
That's a
right?
great one, yeah, because there's a whole prequel and sequel, so
Yeah.
it's like, you know.
Yeah, we know what his
Yeah.
story ends up with, but how he got there is where the series really shined, I think.
Because that's the story now.
Yeah, that's
It's
the
like,
story, is
let's
how.
build up to this moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who is, how did Dexter get here? We had some references in the later seasons, but the core of what this series was about was his youth, how he learned his lessons, and you see, oh, that's how he learned his things. That was interesting. Then you see what he was like before,
And maybe
so-
this is why he did something
yeah,
in a thing that was filmed way before.
yeah.
That's really
exactly.
cool. Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, so I think the having the one thing, and then in the first part, telling people where this is going. One thing that I didn't see this connection before, but then I learned about this is in the store in content and like YouTube videos. I know that we're both like starting our own personal channels
Yeah.
and exploring that space, but one thing I didn't necessarily know before was how important it is to also do that in a YouTube video. Hey, today
Yeah.
this is what I want to cover. You don't have to do it as overt and as explicit as that. These are things that I'm learning myself, right? But
Why not, though?
But-
why not start there?
but start there, right? And
Yeah.
then come up with different ways to vary that.
You don't have to start as being Mr. Beast on YouTube.
Right.
Feel free to start with the most basic, fundamental framework that you can think of as we're talking.
Yeah.
Like, just take exactly what we're saying, throw it in a YouTube video, and it will work.
And try
You know?
it, right?
I think it will work in the fact that you might not get 1 million views, but you're going to learn and you're going to be practiced on these fundamentals of storytelling, which will pay off dividends later as long as you continue to pursue the practice.
Facts. Yeah. It's like, and will work, meaning the way I'm hearing that is will work in the sense that you'll have something that is is accurate to what you set out to do. 'Cause
Yes.
really, I think the whole idea of going viral is sometimes consistently is I think people have a way of doing things and they're really comfortable in that pocket of using their way of doing things to put out consistent stuff. But then the people that become fans understand that, and so there's a subtext there.
Yeah.
And so from there you can start leaving different parts out, including different parts, and developing your own style, where you're making your own choices that are unique to you. And I think honestly, that's the thing that is going to be giving. That's the thing that is going to give way more, have way more value in today, 2025, than knowing it all or being explicitly perfect. It's like your style, the decisions that you choose to make. And I think that starts with understanding the choices that are available.
Yep.
And then it becoming better at delivering that.
And getting better to me is just like you got to practice.
Yeah.
You're not going to get better if you don't practice.
Yeah.
And so even if it doesn't feel like, oh yeah, this is like the perfect way I would have said this, it's like, well, you're getting those reps in.
Yeah.
Where it will pay off if you keep with it, because you're going to start thinking, oh, this is how I can start building this. This is how I can put this out.
Yeah.
And like we said a little bit before, not only is that going to help you in your YouTube endeavors, but you will probably bleed into other aspects of your life where you will become a more clear communicator.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a benefit for everybody.
Yeah. So structure, story structure.
Yeah.
The other thing that beyond having like a specific thing to say and then presenting your case is one thing that I thought that was really interesting. I can't remember the specific page that I picked this up from, but somebody was talking about the goal of a scene is to, well, before I even get into that, there's this one person that I heard talk about, again, the names are eluding me right now, but he was talking about how when he's telling a story, he sees a story as a scene. Everything that he's presenting it's in a scene.
Okay.
And this is a verbal storyteller.
Gotcha.
So that's the first aspect of it. The second aspect of it, which I learned from another guy, is that he sees the momentum in a scene as being a question. Is this person, the protagonist, going to make this decision? Are they going to, like, in a trial, you might see somebody that says, the question is, or the overarching question might be, did this person do it?
Right, are they guilty or not?
Are they guilty or not? And then anytime you introduce new information, that might be its own scene.
Yeah.
Did this person do this or not? Does this make this person guilty? Does this make this person guilty? And not all of them are presented to show that somebody's guilty. Sometimes that's the climax. It's like, okay, now this is the last thing. Is this person guilty? And so, like, the architecture of a scene should be driving towards some type of resolve, which would be, okay, is this person going to take this action, or did I take this action, or did I not? And I think stories become really interesting when you do that at least 3 times. because you're building a pattern by doing it twice, and then the third time you can break that pattern.
That's true.
So if I'm presenting a story, going back to like the whole coding interview, right? I might say, first I tried this, it didn't work. And then I tried this, it didn't work. So now the question is, the third time is, if I try this new thing, is it going to work now? Like, if I try this new way of approaching this problem, is it like, does this solve my problem? Did I learn my lesson and actually accomplish the goal that I wanted to, like, that I set out to do? And then that's where, like, now we have a story.
And what's interesting too is the fact that you're, like, to me, let's say it's in a context of an interview.
Yeah.
One of the signals that I'm reading as you explain this is, oh, there's resiliency there. They didn't just stop on the first or the second time that it failed. They went all the way to the third and obviously tried different things. And that resiliency is a signal that I want on my team.
Yeah.
So it's like making sure too that you're leaving little, like, breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
That somebody can pick up on too intentionally is also, I think, a really important thing. But yeah, and also what you said there around stating it 3 times, you know, really coming back to it over and over and over, can be super powerful, especially if you break it on the last one. Yeah, where it's like, oh, I was hoping for this, but I got this.
Yeah, and that's where you like. So this is where it becomes really interesting. And then I'll give like one more little tidbit, and then maybe we can like wrap it. But if you open up in your introductory, your first act, your opening, the beginning, and you say, this is what's going to happen, in some form or fashion, right? Like the first version's for you. So this is what's gonna happen. Me, the main character in this specific story, is going to talk like signal that I learned this um, technique for delivering something that satisfies the customers. So you can even open up and say, I'm gonna teach you about this moment, or I'm gonna tell you about this moment where this happened, and then you go through and say, when I first started though, it was, and you set the setting.
Right.
It was, 2019, before the pandemic. I was just fresh on the job and I didn't understand the nuances of the job.
Right.
And so I was given this assignment and I had to go and deliver this item, and then you like whatever it might be. But the point being is that why don't we go like all the way down and then go back around?
You're good. No, you're good. Yeah, don't worry about it.
I kind of like the momentum going a little bit faster.
Oh, really?
It felt like my ideas were moving with the car.
That's the first time I'm hearing that. So yeah, okay.
But like yeah, so like I have that I start with that in the beginning, and then I go through like my tribulations and my I go through my trials, my tribulations, and then I land on the part where I tried this thing, it didn't work. I tried this thing, it didn't work, and then I met this one person who said, "Hey, why are you doing it like that? Like you're doing it all completely wrong. Rearrange this, do this first, and then present the idea like this." And then I tried it, and it worked. And so now I know when I go into those situations that I don't want to do it like the way I was doing it before.
Right.
I want to do it this new way. And I was given this information by this person. And that's why I was going back to what I was saying before in terms of, if you need to come up with ideas, think of the source or the people that you learned something from. Talk about how you were approaching it before and how you're approaching it after. And that literally can be your story, because you're talking about
your change. You're the one that changed.
You're the one who changed.
Yeah.
And that to me is the essence of story. And so yeah, man, I think like structurally, you even see the idea of like what some people might call a form of a misdirect, where I said like, okay, in the beginning, people kind of forget what happened, like what you state in the beginning anyways.
Yeah.
It's kind of a device to get people invested in the story.
True.
But then when you get into your second act, or the bulk of it, and you start talking about how you didn't know anything, using the example I used before,
Yep.
then they're going to forget about the first part anyways, and then now you can get into that whole pattern break where you're talking about how you didn't know, and now you know. Now they realize, okay, this is somebody who learned that lesson. Now, if they find that valuable, that's another thing. If you told it in an engaging way, that's another thing.
Right.
But it's something that can at least be the vehicle that you can communicate information.
Yeah, I like that, especially focusing on, I think a lot of people get writer's block. They sit down and it's a blank screen.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, but giving that framework of like, just start with maybe yourself and how you were before, during, and after this revelation that you had, and you could be the focus of the story, and then that signal could be what you learned. And so that's also like a really good way just to start getting your feet wet with like this kind of framework and applying it in a real way.
Yeah.
Because I really want people to, if they are watching this, to be able to apply this stuff in a real way.
Yeah, it should be. I think a lot of people talk really, really high level about stuff, and miss the application of it.
Yep.
Which to me is like, if you can't apply it, then do you actually like? Did you learn anything? Did you know this? It's like there's a story right there. It's like I've been watching a whole bunch of videos, and I didn't. And I just kept getting theory. I kept getting theory. And then I actually found somebody who gave information in a way that I could apply, that I understood. And that changed for me, because now I know the bar that I'm watching and listening to content. It's like, are you telling me something in a way that I can apply it?
Right.
Or are you telling me something in a way that makes you sound smart?
Which is a story in and of itself.
What about you? Any last thoughts? Any lingering thoughts?
There's a lot with stories. I think we will probably have to revisit this topic in a little bit once we have some more of our own stories out there. and just learnings on how this stuff evolves with our company.
Yeah.
I always like putting out something that's more retrospective after we've talked pretty in depth about a topic like this, because we have examples of how we're doing this every day. And so I think that's going to be pretty fun. And then I'm also just curious how, like, after talking about this, it puts it front of mind for me. And so how my brain starts to process things in the next week or two, I think will also be very interesting.
Yeah, there's like a delayed I don't know the second one.
No, there's definitely
like a delayed change, right? Like,
where the subconscious starts to seep in a little bit, little by little, and then if you give it power and you reinforce that, it'll become stronger. And so that's what I'm excited about too, just to, when we're intentional about these things and how they can benefit us in the long term. So yeah, I think it was a great conversation today. If you guys did like the conversation, like, comment, subscribe down below. Hopefully they like this story.
Yeah. Peace.